Outdoors, even in the tiniest patch, nature finds a way to settle in. A crack in the pavement, a rusted bucket, a sliver of sunlight between buildings. These are invitations. This collection of rustic ideas isn't about redesigning your space, but rediscovering it. Where charm lives in imperfection, and inspiration grows from what you already have. There's something quietly magical about turning discarded wooden pallets into charming patio furniture. I remember finding one behind a local hardware store, dusty and forgotten. Now it's my favorite weekend reading nook. With a little sanding and some outdoor varnish, a single pallet becomes a low-slung bench tucked beside lavender pots. Stack two, add cushions, and suddenly you've got a coffee table with soul. What I love most is how the grain tells a story. Each knot and crack adds character, like heirloom pieces passed down through summers. For tight spaces, vertical pallets become herb racks or succulent walls, breathing life into blank walls. It's not just furniture, it's conversation starter material. And when friends ask where I bought it, I smile and say, "Oh, this old thing. It used to hold boxes." You don't need a designer or a big bank account to craft a warm, welcoming patio. Last spring, I transformed my cramped concrete slab with less than $50, and it now feels like a hidden countryside hideaway. It started with a thrifted bistro set painted in chalky sage, then layered with hand-stitched cushion covers from a flea market. A second-hand lantern, filled with tea lights, casts flickering shadows as dusk falls. Gravel from a local yard sale created a makeshift path bordered by broken terracotta shards. No mortar, just charm. The secret? Embrace imperfection. A wobbly wooden stool isn't flawed, it's full of history. By mixing found objects, natural textures, and soft lighting, even the tiniest space feels intentional and intimate. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And every evening there reminds me, beauty thrives where you let it grow. Walking barefoot along a winding garden path shouldn't be reserved for sprawling estates. Mine is just 6 feet long, yet it feels like a journey. I laid flat river stones in a loose zigzag across compact soil, filling gaps with creeping thyme that releases its scent with every step. No cement, no fancy tools, just time and attention. Around curves, I tucked in moss-covered bricks salvaged from an old chimney. In spring, tiny violets sprout between them like secrets whispered by the earth. What began as a way to cover patchy grass turned into a ritual. A daily pause to notice dew on leaves, or the way light filters through morning fog. For small spaces, a path doesn't need length to have meaning. It creates rhythm, draws the eye forward, and makes even a balcony corner feel like a destination. Every stone was placed by hand, and somehow, that makes all the difference. My patio blooms in teacups, colanders, and dented watering cans, all rescued from garage sales and attics. There's a poetry in giving old things new roots. That chipped enamel jug? Now it cradles trailing nasturtiums that spill like liquid gold. A rusted milk pail holds dwarf lavender, its fragrance mingling with afternoon breezes. I love how mismatched containers tell stories. One copper pot belonged to my grandmother's kitchen, now nurturing rosemary under moonlight. They don't match, but together they create harmony, like a choir of different voices singing the same song. For small spaces, these quirky planters add whimsy without clutter. Hang them from hooks, cluster on shelves, or line a railing. Each one becomes a mini garden stage, spotlighting color, texture, and memory. When guests compliment my style, I simply say, they weren't mine to begin with, they were waiting to live again. In my first apartment, the balcony was barely wide enough for 2 chairs side by side, until I discovered fold-down wall benches. Mounted on sturdy brackets, it's a seat by day, a shelf by night, built from reclaimed barn wood. It creaks softly in the wind like an old porch in the countryside. Paired with a hanging swing chair made from a salvaged tire and rope, the space breathes differently, upward not outward. I added a narrow console from a repurposed drawer, stained dark walnut, holding candles and a tiny fern. What matters isn't square footage, but how you invite stillness. On rainy mornings, I sit there with tea, watching water bead on the wood grain. It's not much space, but it holds everything. Quiet growth dreams. Sometimes, the smallest seats offer the deepest comfort. In my first apartment, the balcony was barely wide enough for 2 chairs side by side, until I discovered fold-down wall benches. Mounted on sturdy brackets, it's a seat by day, a shelf by night, built from reclaimed barn wood. It creaks softly in the wind like an old porch in the countryside. Paired with a hanging swing chair made from a salvaged tire and rope, the space breathes differently, upward not outward. I added a narrow console from a repurposed drawer, stained dark walnut, holding candles and a tiny fern. What matters isn't square footage, but how you invite stillness. On rainy mornings, I sit there with tea, watching water bead on the wood grain. It's not much space, but it holds everything. Quiet growth dreams. Sometimes the smallest seats offer the deepest comfort. Wood remembers. The planks I used for my garden edging once formed crates that carried oranges from Spain. Now softened by rain and sun, they cradle marigolds and mint. I didn't sand them smooth, left the splinters, the stains, the nail holes, because those are where the soul lives. One board became a vertical sign carved with "Grow Slow." Another turned into a trellis for sweet peas. I nailed old fence pickets together into a lean-to shelf, holding clay pots and bird nests found in spring. The beauty is in the reuse, in letting materials age gracefully. In a small yard, every piece must earn its place, not just function but evoke feeling. That warped plank? It's not trash. It's texture. It's history. And when ivy climbs it, when moss claims a crevice, it feels like the earth is whispering, "Thank you for remembering me." thought my postage stamp backyard could feel like a farmhouse porch until I stopped chasing grandeur and embraced simplicity. I painted a second-hand gate white, chipped, not pristine, and leaned it against the fence as a backdrop for climbing roses. A galvanized tub, missing its handle, now brims with lemon balm and bee balm. My seating? 2 mismatched Windsor chairs, cushions faded by summer sun. A breadboard hangs on the wall, not for slicing, but as a frame for pressed flowers. Nothing is new, nothing matches, but it all belongs. The key was consistency and tone. Muted greens, creamy whites, raw wood. Even in a 10 by 10 space, this palette creates calm. Now when I sip herbal tea at dawn, steam curling into cool air, I feel miles from the city. A farmhouse patio isn't about location, it's about intention. And mine says stay a while. I collect stones like others collect trinkets. Smooth river rocks from hikes, cracked flagstones from demolition sites, chunks of slate with glittering mica. In my tiny garden, they're not just accents, they're anchors. A circle of flat stones forms a meditation spot, just big enough for a cushion. Between them, creeping jenny spills like liquid jade. Along the border, stacked shale creates a dry creek bed that guides rainwater. And the eye, through the space. One large, lichen-speckled boulder sits near the steps, a silent guardian. People think stone is cold, but warmed by sunlight, it radiates comfort. It grounds the garden literally and emotionally. In a small area, too many plants can overwhelm, but a few well-placed stones add weight, stillness, and timeless beauty. They've outlasted glaciers. Why not my patio? When ground space vanished beneath potted herbs and a folding table, I looked up and found a whole new garden. A salvaged wooden ladder, leaned against the brick wall, now hosts 5 tiers of blooming geraniums and trailing ivy. Old cheese boards became wall-mounted planters, drilled and lined with cocoa fiber. Even a worn-out shoe organizer, hung discreetly, shelters succulents and thyme. The magic? Movement. As vines descend, they soften hard edges. Morning light dances through leaves at eye level. Bees hover at face height, curious and gentle. This isn't just practical, it's poetic. A vertical garden turns a blank wall into a living tapestry. And in the city, where every inch counts, growing upward feels like rebellion. Like saying, even here, life climbs. Winter nights used to mean retreating indoors, until I built a fire pit the size of a dinner plate. Nestled in a metal bowl on a stone base, it burns clean-burning ethanol logs, casting a flickering glow without smoke. Wrapped in a wool blanket, mug in hand, I watch flames dance inches from my toes. It's not for cooking, but for ceremony, the ritual of stillness, of watching embers rise like wishes. I surrounded it with railroad ties painted charcoal, forming a tiny circle of warmth. In summer, I replaced the burner with a planter of night-blooming jasmine. For small patios, a fire feature doesn't need scale to have soul. It needs intimacy. And when the flame is low, it mirrors the quiet joy of being exactly where you belong. On a whim, I screwed mason jar lids into the underside of my pergola and dropped in LED fairy lights. Now each jar glows like a captured star. Some hang solo, others cluster in threes, swaying slightly in the breeze. I filled a few with dried lavender or cinnamon sticks. Scent meets sparkle. At dusk, the light spills downward, painting soft circles on the table below. It's not bright, but it's enough to read a poem, to toast marshmallows, to see the smile on a friend's face. These jars were once for jam, now they hold twilight. In a small space, lighting should invite closeness, not illuminate performance. And these humble glass vessels do just that. They cradle light, memory, and the simple truth that magic often comes in jars. My kitchen window overlooks a row of wooden crates, some intact, others split and repaired with twine. Each holds a different herb. Basil in the sunniest, parsley in the shade, oregano spilling over the edge like green lace. I didn't build raised beds. I let the crates stack, tilt, and lean as they please. Their imperfections give the garden rhythm. Rain darkens the wood, bringing out red undertones in the pine. In winter, I line them with burlap and tuck in rosemary cuttings. Cooking feels different now. Stepping outside, snipping thyme with frost on my gloves, knowing flavor grows just steps away. For small spaces, crate gardens are freedom, mobile, modular, full of character. They're not perfect, but when I crush a leaf between my fingers and smell summer, I know. This is what homegrown means. The best patios don't shout, they whisper. In the curl of ivy around an old nail, in the warmth of sun-baked stone beneath your palms, in the stillness just before dusk. These spaces aren't built overnight. They gather slowly, like moss on wood, like memories tucked into corners. And when you sit among them, you don't just see beauty, you feel it, deep in your bones.